light over here is uncooperative. Hello, hello, my quilty darlings. How are you all doing today? It's Wednesday again, so we are back with 50 blocks in 50 weeks, and today is week 39. Next week we're going to be in the 40s. Oh my goodness. I can't believe how quickly this has actually gone by. Actually, it really has taken a while, but it's just amazing to believe that we're already at this point of 39 blocks. So today we are going to work on a sunrise star. I'm quite happy with this one. I really, really like a bit of complex piecing sometimes. I don't want to do too much of it, but I'll do like a little bit of a challenge now and then. And I have to admit this block was a little bit of a challenge. So let's talk about how we can build this block, and I'll give you some little tips along the way to make sure that it goes smoothly for you. All right. So of course, make sure that you're using your scant 1/4 inch seam allowance when you are sewing all my blocks. I'm always requiring a scant 1/4 inch. But if you have not gotten the pattern yet, or if you are not already a subscriber of the 50 blocks program, then you're going to visit us at sparrowquiltco.com. You're going to put in your name and email address, and you are going to start getting all the blocks delivered by email every single Wednesday morning. Now, another option for you is to join our group on Facebook. It's called Sparrow Quilt Co Daily, and we've got over 4,000 quilters in there who just are super quilty and super supportive and super fun, and they're all quilting from home, yet they've created this wonderful community in our group there on Facebook. So I'd like to invite you to join the group, and we put all the block patterns in the group as well, so that is another way for you to access them. All right, let's talk about what we're going to cut out for this block. We're going to use 4 colors today. I went with dark gray, light gray, this kind of coral color, and white. So out of my dark gray fabric, I cut 2 squares that were 3 7/8 by 3 7/8, and then I cut that once on the diagonal, and that gave me 4 triangles, okay, from a square that was 3 7/8 by 3 7/8, cut once on the diagonal. We're going to get 4 triangles that look just like that little dark gray one there. And I've indicated on the pattern how you should label your pieces, and that just makes it easier for you to put it together as we go through the piecing instructions as well. When it gets a little complex like this, I start labeling the pieces by letter, and then I tell you how to assemble them based on the letter. So make sure you're labeling your pieces. Back to our dark gray fabric, I've also cut 4 squares, and those measure 2 5/8. 5/8, you guys. When we start getting into these angled things, those numbers start getting a bit more challenging. So my advice to you when you're cutting that is find your 2 1/2 inch mark and then scoot it over that 1/8 of an inch to make it that little bit bigger, okay? Anytime I have to cut on the 1/8, I always find the larger measurement that's next to it, and then I scoot my ruler over that little tiny bit, and that helps me stay on track. If you're not confident, then put a little piece of colored tape on your ruler. You could even use a Post-it note. And so what you would do is just put a Post-it note right on that 1/8 line, and that will help you narrow down that measurement real quick and easy without a lot of fussing or double checking, because you've already got that piece in place to tell you exactly where you need it. So when you're dealing with the 8s, that's my suggestion for you. But the coral sure makes the other colors pop. I think so too. Someone is saying that the coral really makes the other colors pop. I love it. I'm thrilled with this block, to be honest. It's my new favorite, but they're all my favorites, so who am I kidding? All right, and thank you for the compliment. I agree. Light gray fabric. We're moving on down the road here. We're going to need 1 square. It's going to be the center of our block. We're going to cut that 4 3/4 by 4 3/4. Okay, that's your biggest piece in the block. So if you wanted to feature or showcase a showy fabric, that's where you can put it. Also, from our light gray fabric, we need to cut 2 squares that are 3 7/8 by 3 7/8. And then once you've cut those 2 squares, I want you to slice them both on the diagonal, and that's going to give us 4 triangles total. Okay, 3 7/8 by 3 7/8. That's our light gray fabrics. Now, out of our white fabric, we are going to cut 4 rectangles that measure 4 3/4 by 2 5/8. So already I know 2 5/8. This little gray square is going to go on the end of there, isn't it? Yes, we're building that center block with these pieces right here. We're going to need 4 of those rectangles out of white fabric that measure 4 3/4 by 2 5/8. While we're on the white, we're going to carry on and cut 2 squares that are 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. Right? 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. Obviously, there were 2 more there previous to this. And then once you've cut those, you're going to slice it twice on the diagonal this time, okay? So once you cut your squares, try and keep them really nice and still, and then cut across them on both diagonal lines. That's going to give you 8 white triangles from that 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 inch square, okay? 2 of those squares. We're going to do the same thing with our coral. Okay, we're going to cut 2 squares that are 4 1/4 by 4 1/4, right? 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. We're going to slice it twice on the diagonal, and again, we're going to end up with 8 triangles in the coral from that 4 1/4 inch square. All right? If you would prefer to have the paper pattern, like I said, visit us at sparrowquiltco.com, put in your name and email address, and we'll start emailing you the patterns every Wednesday morning, along with a reminder to join us here for this video. Works out kind of handy, doesn't it? Now, as I made my way through this block, I was careful to press my seams a particular way to reduce the bulk. That is the biggest issue with this block, is the seams. There is a lot of bulkiness. Oh, aside from the cutting, you know, those fussy little 8s and stuff like that. So please follow my pressing directions carefully in the block. I planned them so that everything alternates in directions and reduces the bulk that you're dealing with. The first thing we're going to do is make this center square. You can see when my block is on point, it looks like a diamond, but if I turn it back square towards you, we just need to create this simple center piece. So in order to do that, I need to create a top and a bottom row. So I'm going to make 2 of those. White rectangle in the center, 2 dark gray squares on either side. We're going to sew both of those onto there, and we are going to press those towards the gray fabric. Okay, press those towards the gray. Now for our center row, we're going to take that big light gray square, the 4 3/4 inch, and we're going to sew a white rectangle on either side. Okay, and then this time we're going to press towards the center, the light gray fabric. So let's go ahead and do that part right now. I've told you guys before how I like to line up my sewing, kind of assembly line like, and just get everything ready to pound through my sewing machine. And I feel like I'm being more efficient, and I can chain piece, which means I've got a little tiny bit of thread in between one piece to the next. But it's better than wasting a big long tail each time. And I can sew as many onto that chain as I like. So sometimes I'll fill my whole table with pieces that need to be sewn, and I'll just get busy. All right, this part, very simple, very straightforward. We're pretty much just stitching rectangles and squares together. It's when we start getting those triangles and the angles in there that things, you've got to pay a little more attention sometimes. All right, I'm going to press this one to the dark gray and this one to the light gray, so I always put my piece on top that I'm pressing towards. And this is my EasyPress pen. It's filled with EasyPress Solution, which is a starch of some kind, and it just makes my pressing more effective. I tell people all the time, I used to feel like my pressing did not make a difference. It was just not helpful. But now between the EasyPress pen and my woolly mat, it's like a dream combination for ideal pressing. All right. Now we have to add the left side of this little combo, and I've already pieced another one of these ahead of time to save a little bit of time. I'm trying not to bore you, my viewers, because bored viewers mean X'd out Brady. So let's go ahead and stitch that up. And I'm going to give you some advice for a little bit later in this block. My suggestion is that you use a stiletto or a tailor's awl or something with a long, fine point that can help you control your fabric as you're sewing. And we'll talk more about that in a few minutes when I get to that point. But today I'm going to use what's called that purple fang. And it's got a flat, square edge. It's also got a pointy, skinny edge. And I find that really helpful for controlling my fabric as it makes its way under the presser foot. Because once we get into these thicker seams in the outer corners of this block, everything starts to skew and move around. So if you've got a tool like that, stashed away in a drawer or something, I'm going to want you to dig it out for today's block, okay? So let's go ahead and apply the EasyPress pen one more time. Like I said, it's a little bit of starch in there, or EasyPress Solution it's called. And when I run it along the seam, it just softens the fabric and allows it to fold open effortlessly. You can see how flat it is already, and I haven't even pressed. I could leave it like this if I choose, but I get an extra flat, crisp finish when I press, so I always press it. I've got an extra one of these stashed under my cutting mat, or my pressing mat. So now what I'm going to do is add the top and bottom border to the center of my block here. All right, so you can see how it's starting to come together. Now I've got an intersection there, so of course I'm going to use my fork pins like I always do, because I want my intersections to line up nicely. Now in my challenge, I just finished up a 14-day challenge where we made our way through a fairly complex quilt in a 14-day period. And oh, those quilters did so great and their skills all improved so much. But one of them was asking me, how do I get those pins in there so that everything stays flat? And what I honestly find the thing that matters is inserting them at a flat angle. I don't insert them at a right angle from my fabric. I try to keep them flat with almost parallel with my fabric rather than perpendicular to the fabric. And you'll find they go in there much flatter if you do it at that angle. I try to get everybody to use fork pins. They're not for everybody, and there's so many different methods. You know, you can use straight pins, or this EasyPress glue can also come with, EasyPress Solution also comes with a glue, so you could use that option as well. We just need some way to keep those seams together to make sure our piecing looks the way we want it to. I like precision. I'm never going to kill myself trying, but I do like to put in my best effort to make things look nice. Now this time, when I sewed those on, I pressed these out towards that outer edge, so I'm going to run my EasyPress Solution along this side, and I'm going to open it up, and then we'll press that quickly, and we'll attach the other side as well. Then I'm going to teach you how to build this corner. And we're going to need to make 4 corners and attach them around each side of the block. And that's what gives this centerpiece that on-point type of look. On-point just means turned on the diagonal. I really like on-point. I tend to do a lot of things that way. But on-point leads to a lot of funny numbers being cut and lots of triangles and bias edges.
Here's a tip that she learned is if you use Mary Ellen's Best Press, you spray it on your diagonal cuts, it kind of stops them from getting out of shape or warping.
Oh, that's awesome. Someone has shared a tip there that if you use Mary Ellen's Best Press, or probably starch of any kind, and spray your triangles. So we've got a bias edge here, which means I could pull this apart, like because the threads are all cut on the diagonal, which means they are raw and exposed. So if I pulled it, they'll literally just unravel like that. And if you spray it with something that makes it stiffer, it's going to maintain that delicate edge a little bit better. That is a really great idea. I like it a lot. The people who make this EasyPress Solution EasyPress pen and solution and the seam align glue. I met them in Houston, and she had this continuous spray bottle. She pre-washes everything, which I do not do. So that was my only concern, because if I use the starch just on my regular fabric, I'm going to get a lot more shrinkage, right? So I would only recommend this if you pre-wash your fabrics. But she just sprays the heck out of everything. Like, she could probably stand this up and it would just stay there because there's so much starch in it. But when you pre-wash your fabrics, you've washed out all the sizing, so there is no stiffness left in the fabric. You almost have to re-provide the stiffness so that you can have easy sewing. That's why I prefer to sew straight off the bolt, but not everybody does. And that's why we have to accommodate and find ways that work for everybody. All right, lots of talking, not enough action. Let's get this last border sewn on the center piece here. It is a border of sorts, isn't it? The border around my little block. All right. Trim that away, get rid of those threads, pull our pins and press, and then we're going to build a corner. Now the corner is a bit labor intensive, I'm not going to lie to you. So what I did today is I pre-assembled 3 of my corners, and that will make my block a little bit quicker today. I don't want anybody falling asleep while they're watching my video. That wouldn't be fun, would it? All right, so there you can see we've got our center block. Now I'm just going to bust these out for fun so you can see them. What I'm going to do next, after I assemble all my 4 corners, is put them on opposite sides, press them, and then I'll add the remaining 2. Okay, so the first thing I need to do to create this corner is build these flying geese units. So here's how I'm going to do that. I've got the light gray triangle, and I'm going to bring in my 2 little coral pieces. All right, I'm going to take that corner and place it on top of the light gray triangle. And whenever I'm doing flying geese, I've preached this at you guys before, I'm always making sure this bottom edge is perfectly lined up. If it is not, the outer corner of my flying geese unit isn't going to turn out right. That's always the most important thing to me. I want to create a proper rectangle shape so that it joins into the rest of the pieces properly. So make sure that that bottom edge is lined up really, really well. Okay, let's take this over to the machine now. I'm going to sew down that side. Now, of course, whenever I'm transporting it over to the machine, it always shifts or moves just a wee bit, so I have to adjust before I begin. I like to start at that top point. There's more fabric there to grab onto for the feed dogs. All right, so up to this point, my regular sewing machine speed has been fine. Once I finish up these flying geese, I'm going to want to turn down the speed of my machine a little bit, because what happens is we start joining lots of layers and intersecting corners. And when I put that under my machine, it's a little bit slow to get things moving because of all those layers and the lumps of the additional seams. This one we're going to press towards our gray center triangle. So what I want you to do is slow down the speed of your machine so that when you begin sewing, your machine isn't off to the races. You know, it's just going to slowly attempt to work through all those layers, and you can carefully and assertively guide it through from the front of the machine and make sure that those beginnings don't get all lumped up. And I'm going to show you what happened in my piecing in a few minutes here, but it was as I ended, the thickness was so significant that it kept pushing the piecing off to the right, and my seam kept going in the wrong direction. 3 times it took me, you guys, to get it just right. So that's why I am sharing this with you, so that you don't experience that same frustration, burst of curse words that I experienced last night. All right, I'm going to attach my second coral triangle now onto my flying geese unit. Where am I focused on lining up? The bottom edge. Of course, it's important to me that this line is also lined up, but this is really important to me. Sometimes this isn't going to be perfect. Sometimes one or the other of these is going to be slightly deficient. I'm okay with that as long as this down here is good. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and sew that. And I don't mean like severely deficient. If it's severely deficient, there's something that needs to be repaired there. If it's off a sliver, I can slightly see a bit of the other color. That is okay. Too fast. I'm going to go ahead and turn down now because my next step is going to require slower sewing. Sometimes I require slower talking. All right, again, I'm going to press towards the light gray triangle in the center. And we're going to give that a nice press. Excellent. All right, so now, oops. If I look at my corner unit, I can see where the flying geese is. Now I'm going to turn my flying geese around so that it's just like the one I see there, right? That's important. They're all four identical, so we don't want to start mixing stuff up. I don't want to sew my flying goose in like that. Then I'm going to be mad. Now I need to attach two little white triangles on either side of this flying goose. So I'm going to bring this over and lay it on top. And what's kind of nice about the dog ears that hang off the flying goose is that it's going to help me line up this white triangle. That tip is also going to match that dog ear that's below. And again, I'm making sure this bottom edge is really nice and straight. I want a perfectly straight line across the bottom of this piece so that it can attach onto that square precisely. Let's go ahead and attach that. Then I'm going to attach the other side as well. And these I'm going to press towards my coral fabric. Okay, time for the other one. It should look the same as the one across from it, but of course, mirror image. Sew that on as well, and then we can press them both towards the coral fabric. Now there again, I had some extra thickness, so I was glad that I started slow and that I was pulling my threads to the back. That helps pull that piecing towards the back of the machine. I'm going to run that EasyPress pen along those two coral seams, and then we'll open this little beauty up. Give it a press. Now our last step in creating this corner is adding this dark gray triangle. And what I did for this, because I was having trouble centering it, and I actually had to remove one of them because it didn't line up properly, so I decided to do it a specific way, that way it could come out properly. Let's see here. All right. So I want the center of this triangle to be at the center of this piece. So what I've done is folded my flying geese unit in half, and I've got the light gray triangle at the top. And I'm going to have the corners of the flying geese meet right here as best I can, as close as I can. And I'm going to pinch that corner. Now we're not getting overly aggressive because this is a bias edge right here. I'm just pinching it nice and square between my fingers. I'm not gonna do any of this, okay? No rubbing while you pinch, just a firm pinch, nice and square, then release it, because you're gonna ruin that bias edge if you do any sort of rubbing between your fingers. Again, I've got a bias edge here, but I'm gonna bring those two corners together, and I'm being delicate. I know that that's fragile. Again, I've got the two corners together in that hand. I'm going to do a gentle but firm pinch, and that's going to create a little crease that's going to match the little crease I created in that one. And I'm going to lay that over top of the other. And I'm going to put a little straight pin in there. None of my pins are actually straight anymore because I sew over them. And now let's go ahead and sew that. This has got a thick beginning and a thick ending. It's thick, like I mean it, super thick. And this is only beginning of the thick. We got more thick coming. So I've got my needle down and I've got my presser foot on it, and my speed is low. Because if I start this at a racetrack speed, it's just going to chew up that corner. And then I'm going to be unhappy with that because it's going to compromise the outer edge of my block. So let's start slow and take our time, and very firmly from both sides, you're going to move the fabric along. Sometimes the feed dogs just aren't enough. Sometimes you need a little bit of extra help. Maybe you have a FAF with the IDT, or you have some sort of dual feed from the top. That will help as well. But I still want you to feed it through from the right and left sides. We need to keep it square too. We can't have it shuffling around because then our seam isn't going to be straight and accurate. So I've got my fingernail braced against the little dog ear on the inside here, and that's helping me feed it through square. All right, I'm past the halfway point, and now I'm heading towards that second thick seam. That's where my little pointy tool is going to come in really handy. I'm going to brace it up against my piecing right now before it's even under the presser foot, and I'm going to get it moving along straight. And as it works over that extra thickness, sometimes I'm literally just doing one stitch at a time, because if you do too many, it just starts to skew things. Make your way through patiently and make your way through straight so that things stay accurate. If you don't care, then go for it. I'm not trying to cramp your sewing style. I'm just sharing with you what I do in order to get an accurate result. I'm ready to press this now towards that dark gray fabric. Now remember, we are dealing with two bias edges here, and the advice earlier of stabilizing with some extra starch is an excellent idea, but I'm always very careful when I'm dealing with a couple of bias edges. And I will be very specific about up and down, none of the coasting the iron over these bias edges. Even though they're sewn, it's still really easy to distort and stretch them with heat and steam. Okay, I'm really bad for this iron wiggle. Right at the end, I'll go up and down, and then right at the end, I go, and it almost always skews my little corners, and then I can see the effects of that, and it irritates me, so I'm very careful now not to do that.
Wendy says, would a stiletto be of help with the thickness?
You bet. The stiletto, someone is asking, would a stiletto be helpful? 100%. Definitely. I would definitely use a stiletto. Mine is just a little purple thing. I actually prefer the clover stiletto. It's got a fine, sharp tip. It looks like a bit of a weapon, though, so I keep the purple thing around because I don't like that all at home with all my children. None of them stay out of my sewing stuff, so that's the problem. All right, so now you can see how this is all going to come together, I'm sure. We've got the four corners that we are going to add onto this block. So what I'm going to do first is add the one side, and I'm going to fork pin those two intersections to make sure that that stays lined up, because that is visually where our eye is going to see mistakes. So I want to make sure that that is proper.
Carol says, what is a stiletto?
Carol's asking, what is a stiletto? It is a tool that has a long, sharp, fine point, almost like an ice pick. And it, did that look threatening? It just helps us control our piecing as it moves under the machine. I'm using this little purple thing, it's made out of plastic. The awl is actually metal and is very sharp and just gives you fine precision when you're dealing with bulk, trying to get it under your machine. But like I said, the clover awl is my favorite. This one is just less of a weapon. All right, now I have pinned those two intersections. I'm going to sew along this edge. Now, this isn't where the extra thickness is. It's when we add, yeah, when I come back again and add more here. Is that where I had the trouble? Maybe it was just the sewing of those. That's what it was. Okay. So when I was sewing this dark gray onto here, this is where that severe thickness is that really gave me a hard time. So I'm going to bring my original piece over to the camera here so you can see. All right, so I pieced this one last night and I began sewing it this side. Try and get a bit more clear. I began sewing it this side and I was fine all the way across, but then when I encountered the thickness at this end, I'm hoping you can see my seam. I'm trying to focus on it. You can see twice. What's that? Up. Is that better? Twice my seam went off askew and I ended up way up here. The third time I was finally successful and my seam continued straight through there. I'm hoping you can see that. I'm sorry, it doesn't look very clear to me. But anyways, so if you use the stiletto and hold it nice and straight as this is going under the presser foot, you're going to be able to maintain that 1/4 inch seam. But like I said, twice I tried and it went askew. And I really had to be very purposeful about holding it in place. So that's where that extra thickness is going to occur for you. That's where you're going to want that fine-tipped tool that is going to help you ease things under the presser foot.
And Kay says, are you saying fork pin? So what is it?
Okay, yes, I am saying fork pin. It is a double-ended pin that has a U shape at the top. Landon is going to bring one closer to the camera for you there so you can see it. I use it when I'm joining intersections of any kind. Angled, straight. Oops, she dropped it. I can't live without them. I first started using them when I was making, actually when I first learned how to quilt. My first quilt teacher taught me about fork pins, and then I used them for a gigantic Bargello, and it took forever, but it was so worth it. Every intersection is perfect. So if you're about precision, then fork pins are just the cat's meow. They are awesome. All right, so now I am ready to attach this assembled corner unit to my center block. What I always notice when I have a little triangle like this is it always tries to pull away from the raw edge. So when I take this over to my machine, I'm going to be very purposeful about making sure this is lined up perfectly. But not only that, when I get past this pin here, I'm going to pause and I'm going to line up this corner again, because this will continue to just scoot its little way out of alignment. And fabric is spineless. It will just go to the path of least resistance. You have to be the boss. You have to put it back where it belongs and make sure it stays there if you want to get the results that you're after. All right, let's go ahead and stitch this on. All right, here we go. Remember to slow down for those pins. If you're going to sew over your pins like I do, slow down. The big concern with hitting a pin is that it's going to break or your needle's going to break. That sucker's going to fly up and hit you in the eye. No one wants that. But I do want precision, so I'm not willing to take my pins out, but I am willing to slow down. All right, I was very careful there to make sure. As I sewed across this point on the wrong side, I don't want to cut off the tip of that gray, so I was very careful to stitch just outside of that point, and I can see it based on the thickness from the wrong side. Okay, I've lined up my white triangle again to make sure that it stays where I want it to. And let's finish off this little edge here. Awesome. I chose to press these outer corners towards the center. The reason I did that is that this piece here has 2 perpendicular intersecting seams, and it has a angled intersecting seam. That's a lot of resistance pushing against my seam. This side, these 2 intersecting seams don't seem as bulky because the other ones, there's a lot of layers there, right? So I've got less bulk on this side. It is going to go in that direction more naturally. So let's press towards that center.
Jamie would like to know, what if you use 2 little pins instead of 1?
Oh, Jamie's asking, can I use 2 little pins instead of a fork pin? And that is going to work as well. There is something about the U that just brings those intersections together, but in a pinch, I have also used 2 straight pins. Fork pins are not cheap either, is the thing. So, 2 straight pins are going to do the same job. It's going to work. That was a good question. All right, I have now pressed that seam towards center, and my point is beautiful, exactly how I wanted it. That's coming along really, really well. So the next thing I'm going to do is attach the opposite corner and press towards center. Then once that's done, we're going to attach those 2 remaining corners, and again, we're going to press towards center. I'm not going to take up the rest of your day with that. What I'm going to do is wave my finished block proudly and show you that that is what a sunrise star is going to look like once you've attached all 4 of your corners. So I hope you have enjoyed that quilt block tutorial. Like I said, you can get the paper pattern by visiting us at sparrowquiltco.com. You're going to put in your name and email address, and then you'll be on the 50 blocks list. Another option is for you to join us on our Facebook group. It's called Sparrow Quilt Co. Daily. We've got a great community of over 4,000 quilters there. All so much fun, so supportive of one another. Everybody loves to share their progress, share their blocks, share their fabrics, and people share other projects too. You don't only have to be working on our stuff to be a member of that group. So go ahead, join that group. And I hope you'll also subscribe to our YouTube channel while you're here so that you don't miss anything. All right, guys, I'm going to let you go. I've got to finish getting ready for my Learn to Quilt class that starts on Friday. There's still time to join if you haven't yet. It's really exciting. It's going to be a 6-week class. I'm going to walk you all the way through making a quilt from start to finish, so ponder that if you're interested. But otherwise, I'm going to see you back here next Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. I hope you all have a great week. We have a winner. I totally forgot to ask you guys to share. You guys just share on your own now. It's what? Heather Grintz, it's you! Yay! Heather is one of our most loyal viewers and customers, and she's just a sweetheart from Texas. I'm so happy that you won, Heather. You know the deal. Actually, don't worry about it. I'll just get the girls to enter you in. We've got your info. Congratulations, Heather. I'm so glad it was you. All right, so we're going to mail Heather a block kit to make a block just like mine. We'll send the pattern along as well. Again, congratulations, Heather. And guys, let's see you back here next Wednesday, 10:30 a.m. Okay? Is it a date? I'll see you then. Oh, and it's got something else. No? We're good? Okay. Bye, guys. See you then.